Close your eyes for a moment, just one moment. Notice what happens. Almost immediately, something inside you wants to move, to check, to scroll, to speak, to fill the space with something. Anything. That impulse, that quiet discomfort you feel when nothing is happening, that is where we begin today. Because most people will never sit with that feeling long enough to understand it. And that is exactly why most people will never fully understand themselves. My name does not matter. What matters is this conversation. What matters is that somewhere, in the middle of a world that never stops moving, you paused. And in that pause, something is already beginning. Let us talk about where we are, not philosophically, practically. Look around at the world we live in. Every hour of every day is filled with something designed to take your attention. Your phone, your notifications, your feeds, your news, your conversations, your entertainment. The noise never stops. It shifts, it evolves, but it never stops. And most people have accepted this as normal. They have forgotten what it feels like to simply be, to sit without a screen, to think without distraction, to breathe without reaching for something. The world is extraordinarily loud, not just in sound, but in information, in stimulation, in demand. Something is always pulling at you. Someone always needs a response. Something always needs your reaction. And over time, this constant noise becomes the baseline, the background frequency of a life that never fully rests. You get so used to the speed that slowing down feels wrong. Stillness begins to feel like a problem, like something to fix. And so you fill it. You fill silence with music. You fill waiting with scrolling. You fill evenings with shows. You fill quiet moments with conversation that has no real purpose, just noise to cover the quiet. Not because you enjoy all of it, but because the alternative, the actual silence, makes you uncomfortable. And you cannot explain why. You only know that when it gets too quiet, something in you rises. A restlessness, a mild anxiety, a need to do something, to move, to engage, to escape. Here's the truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. That discomfort is not random. That restlessness is not boredom. What you are feeling when silence arrives is the presence of your own mind. And for most people, that is the scariest place they have ever been. Think about that slowly. When you remove the noise, all that is left is you, your thoughts, your unresolved emotions, your patterns, your fears, your questions, everything you have been distracting yourself from, quietly waiting. And rather than face it, you reach for the phone. You turn on the television. You make a call. You do anything to avoid the stillness. Because in the stillness, there is no escape from yourself. But here is what no one tells you. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is training. Sit with that idea. Let it settle. Because this is the shift. This is the realization that separates the people who grow from the people who simply stay busy. Stillness is not the absence of progress. It is the foundation of it. It is not a void you fall into. It is a discipline you build. Every moment you choose to sit in quiet, every moment you choose to breathe before you react, every moment you resist the pull of distraction, you are training something. Something that most people never develop. Something the world does not sell. Because it is not profitable. You are training your mind. And a trained mind is one of the rarest things on this earth. Consider what happens when you constantly avoid silence. When you move from one stimulation to the next without pause. Your thoughts never fully form. They are always interrupted. Your emotions never fully process. They are suppressed, covered, buried under entertainment and distraction. Your reactions become automatic. Because you have never practiced pausing between feeling something and doing something. You see something that upsets you, and you respond immediately. You feel anxious, and you immediately reach for relief. You feel bored, and you immediately seek stimulation. There is no space between the stimulus and the response. No reflection, no consideration, no choice, just reaction. And a person who only reacts is not a person in control. They are a person being controlled by their emotions, by their environment, by their impulses, by whoever last had their attention. The person who cannot sit in stillness is the person who can be moved by anything because they have never developed the capacity to hold still, to observe, to choose. Now think about the alternative. Think about what begins to happen when you choose stillness. Not once, not occasionally, but as a practice, as a discipline, as something you return to every day. When you sit in silence and you do not immediately escape it, you begin to observe your mind. You begin to watch your thoughts the way you might watch clouds moving across the sky, not engaging with everyone, not reacting to everyone, simply observing. And in that observation, something extraordinary begins. You begin to see patterns. You begin to recognize the thoughts that repeat, the fears that return. The narratives you tell yourself that are not true, but have been playing so long you stopped questioning them. Stillness reveals what noise conceals. This is self-awareness, and without it, every other form of self-improvement is limited. You can change your habits on the surface. You can follow systems and routines. But if you do not understand your own mind, if you have never sat quietly enough to observe how you actually think and why you actually feel what you feel, then you are building on a foundation you cannot see. And eventually, the foundation cracks. Stillness gives you access to yourself, real access, not the performance of who you are in public, not the version of yourself that exists in your social feeds, the actual interior of your experience, the quality of your thoughts, the nature of your emotional responses, the values you hold and the ones you only claim to hold. All of it becomes visible when you stop moving long enough to look. And what you find there may not always be comfortable. In fact, it often is not. The first weeks of choosing stillness can feel deeply unsettling because the thoughts you have been running from do not simply disappear because you stopped long enough to hear them. They arrive, they surface. Old grief, old anger, old shame, old questions you never answered, things you did that you are not proud of, things done to you that you never fully processed. Stillness does not promise comfort, it promises honesty. And from honesty, real growth is possible. Because you cannot heal what you will not face. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You cannot develop clarity about a mind you are constantly fleeing from. Let us talk about emotional control. Because this is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the conversation about strength. Many people believe emotional control means not feeling, that the controlled person is cold, detached, unaffected. That is not control. That is suppression. And suppression is not strength. It is a dam waiting to break. Real emotional control is something else entirely. It is the ability to feel fully and still choose how you respond. It is the space between the emotion and the action, and that space is built in stillness. When you sit daily with your own inner experience, when you allow emotions to arise without immediately acting on them or escaping them, you develop something quiet and profound. Tolerance. Not tolerance of injustice, but tolerance of discomfort. The ability to feel something difficult and not be destroyed by it, not be controlled by it. The ability to sit with sadness without collapsing, to feel anger without exploding, to feel fear without retreating, to feel longing without desperately chasing. This is what stillness builds. One quiet session at a time, one conscious breath at a time, one paused reaction at a time, and this is is where discipline is truly born. Not in the dramatic moments, not in the declarations or the big decisions. Discipline is born in the small, invisible moments where you choose discomfort over escape, where you choose to remain present when everything in you wants to leave. The moment you sit down in silence when you want to reach for your phone, that is a disciplined act. Small, invisible, powerful. Because discipline is not about force. It is about choice. Repeated. Refined. Deepened over time. The person who has practiced stillness knows this. Their focus is different. Because their mind has been trained to rest in one place rather than scatter across dozens of stimulations simultaneously. When they work, they work. When they think, they think. There is a quality of attention available to them that is increasingly rare in this world. Depth. The ability to go deep into one thing. Not because they are more intelligent, but because they have practiced the discipline of remaining present, of not fleeing, of holding still. The second person feels the same discomfort, but they do not run from it. They sit with it quietly. They breathe. They let the restlessness rise, and they observe it. They do not judge it. They do not perform peace. They simply remain. And slowly, something begins to shift. The noise inside them quiets. Not completely, not immediately, but gradually, like sediment settling in still water. And in that settling, clarity begins to emerge. A thought they have been too busy to finish. A feeling they have been too distracted to process. A direction they have been too scattered to see. The stillness does not give them answers from outside. It gives them access to the answers already inside them. Hidden under the noise, these two people live in the same world, but they inhabit very different inner experiences of it. And over years, over decades, the distance between them grows. Not because one worked harder, but because one trained differently. One built their life on the foundation of constant stimulation. The other built their life on the foundation of stillness and self-knowledge. And foundations determine everything. You cannot build a life of depth on a mind that cannot sit still. You cannot build genuine confidence on a self you have never truly met. You cannot build emotional maturity without the practice of feeling things fully. You cannot build real focus in a mind that has been trained to scatter. Every time you sit in quiet and do not run. Every time you breathe and pause before reacting. Every time you choose to feel something instead of suppressing it. Every time you return to yourself when the world pulls you outward. You are doing the most important work of your life. The work that no one will see. The work that will not trend. The work that will not impress anyone at first. But the work that will change everything. Slowly, quietly. Surely. Because the strongest version of you is not built in the noise. It is built in the moments the world never sees. In the quiet mornings. In the paused reactions. In the emotions felt and processed rather than buried. In the thoughts observed rather than blindly followed. In the long, patient, disciplined practice of learning to be still. In stillness, you do not lose time. You gain yourself. And from yourself, everything meaningful is possible. Take that with you today. And if this reached something inside you, if something in these words resonated with the part of you that is ready to stop running from the quiet and start building within it, then let that mean something. Let it be the beginning of a practice. Let it be the day you chose depth over distraction. Comment, I choose stillness.